Hello, and welcome to this edition of The Government We Deserve. Today, my guest is a gentleman whom quite a few of you will probably not recognize by name. The main reason for that is that the media within the state of Illinois refuses to recognize this gentleman as well. His name is Jerry Kohn. He is the Libertarian candidate for United States Senate to represent the state of Illinois. Jerry, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks, Dale.
Good. Let's start off the show here by talking a little bit about this boycott, basically, of your campaign, the inability of the Illinois media to recognize you as a bona fide candidate for United States Senate.
Yeah, it's been a little bit frustrating, I guess, in that the Libertarian Party, hit the streets. We collected well over the 25,000 signatures required to get on the ballot. So we are going to be on the ballot, and yet an article after article that I read on the campaign, all I keep hearing is Barack Obama is unopposed. Well, he's simply not. In fact, there are currently 5 candidates on the ballot. And so it's simply not true. I mean, Jack Ryan hasn't even officially withdrawn. So, I mean, if they just check the Board of Elections website, they'll find there are numerous candidates on that ballot. And, it's okay, I suppose that as privately owned organizations, they're free to take whatever editorial position they want on the race. I'd just like to see them report the fact that there is opposition and at least mention, the opposition. If they don't want to support me, that's fine, but I think they owe it to their readers and to the viewers to give them the facts, to tell them the truth about what's going on.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I fired off a scathing letter to the editor of the Chicago Tribune after them mentioning, it looks like the Republicans are not going to run a candidate, so Mr. Obama will be unopposed. And I asked them, are you simply incompetent, or are you deliberately trying to boycott the Libertarian candidate completely? Which is it? That's all I ask. I just want an answer. Which is it that you're professing to be here at this point?
Well, I hope it's not the latter. I mean, I hope it's something we can just simply correct. I can accept the fact that maybe some reporters just simply don't know that there are more than 2 parties in the country, and that this can be corrected. If it's not, then it's really a sad statement about the state of democracy in this country if they're deliberately misleading their readers and their viewers.
I agree.
Yeah.
While we're on that subject, hypothetically, if the GOP does not, for whatever reason, run a candidate, do you believe that that's going to be beneficial or detrimental to your campaign?
Whether the GOP puts a candidate in there or not, I plan to run a vigorous and active campaign to try to get our message out. I think it's telling that the GOP so far can't even find someone that's willing to pick their standard up off the ground and carry it. I was frankly eager to do that for the Libertarian Party because I believe in what I stand for and what our party stands for, so I'm proud to represent my party. I know my chances aren't good, the polls don't favor me, but that doesn't stop me. And it's interesting that all the leading Republicans are running away, from the race. It is kind of interesting that they're so desperate to find anybody that will pick up their standard, to run for their party.
Well, I don't mean to be critical of the Republican Party here in Illinois, but I have, in my lifetime, never seen a state party in such a state of disarray in my entire life. I mean, as they create energy, it just continues to be negative energy, and it just continues to roll downhill here. And I don't know what it's going to take for them to right themselves, but. Obviously,
they have to make up their mind what they stand for.
Exactly.
And I think once they make up their mind, then they can probably, they're so worried about power and position and who's going to get what that they've really kind of lost their way on what they stand for. And I think they have to figure that out first.
Why don't you give us a few minutes and tell us a little bit about Jerry Kohn, where you hail from, what you currently do for vocation and so forth, and let the viewers get an idea of who they're going to be voting for come November.
Well, I'm a high school teacher. I teach courses in U.S. government and teach courses in economics. I've been teaching for 15 years right now. I'm very proud of being a teacher. I think it's an important occupation, and I hope to
absolutely
have an impact in the future. And in fact, I sometimes think that's my most important impact on the future might be as a teacher. Politics, of course, is something that contributes to that, but I think education is really where that future is going to be. you know, and like I said, I got involved with the Libertarian Party several years ago, just simply because I became very frustrated at the fact that our country is going in the wrong direction, and I figured this is one more thing I could try to do to change that, is run for office. It's one of the few times when the public pays any attention to some of these issues, so yeah, so I'm going to make the state my classroom, I guess, and try to change things if I can.
Now, this isn't your first time in the political arena. You have run for office in the past?
I have. 2 years ago, I ran for 28th District Rep in the state legislature, and I went out and got the signatures, walking door to door for hundreds of hours, and while that effort didn't succeed in getting me elected to the state legislature, it was well worth it. I think I reached out and provided refuge for other frustrated voters for expressing themselves. And hopefully, you know, little by little, we're getting the message out, and eventually I'm hoping that the voters of Illinois will express their displeasure with what's being done to them by those people who supposedly are serving them. So, yeah, I have tried in the past.
Well, I commend you for your courage, because I only had enough courage to run for a city council race in little old Grand Junction, Colorado. So, but it was enlightening, it was educational, and my wife says if I ever try to do it again, that'll be the end of our relationship. So.
Yeah, my wife's been very good about this.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Have you had any? I'm sure you've had plenty of input from your wife as far as your being a candidate for United States Senate.
Well, I'm a newlywed. We got married on May 30th.
Oh,
and,
really?
So,
well, that's my son's birthday. So
we're planning a wedding and a campaign at the same time.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
Great.
And yeah, no, she's been supportive. You know, although, like I said, it's a grind, and it's an education for her too, I suppose.
I'm sure. Now, before we go any further, I want to give the viewers an opportunity to find out how to contact your campaign. What's the best way for them to call Jerry Kohn and talk to you about issues, find out how they can donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to your campaign, and so forth?
Well, my website is www.kohn2004.org, and that's probably the best way. You can contact me via email.
Okay, they've got a link that we can send an email to you.
Right, and there's a link for donations if anybody would like to either send a check to my post office box, or if they want to donate through the website via credit card. So there's numerous ways they can get involved, and I answer all my emails. So.
Great. One thing that I noticed on your website this morning before I came to the studio is there was a phrase on there, "What will Jerry Kohn do for you?" And whenever I see that, especially coming from a politician, you know, the hairs start to stand up on the back of my head, and your response to that was absolutely marvelous. You want to just tell us exactly what it says there, because I think it's terrific.
Yeah, well, when I was out, you know, petitioning and campaigning, people would ask me that, well, what are you going to do for me? And I basically stay out of your way. To let you run your own life. It's, you know, I think we've gotten to the point, politics is always about what politicians can do for you, but when it comes down to it, government doesn't produce anything. They don't, you know, what they produce, what they get, they take from others.
That's right. And
so if you're asking me to do something for you, you're asking me to take from one group of people and give it to you. And I don't think that's right. It's just morally wrong. So I say the best I can do as a political leader is stay out of your way and let you be the architect of your own life. You know, keep what you earn, trade with your fellow man, and try to make the best life you can for yourselves, and not rely on politicians to do everything for you. I think that's really what I was. That's why I put that link on there. What will I do for you? I'll basically stay out of your way.
And as well, work as hard as you can to try to keep government out of our lives as much as possible.
Yeah, as a member of the Senate, of course, with the rules of the Senate, I think, you know, a lot of people say, well, what can one senator do? Well, a whole lot. The rules of the Senate give one senator an awful lot of power to stop government from doing things. Maybe not pass legislation, but stop legislation from being passed. And that's probably what I'd spend most of my time trying to do, stop these tax increases and spending increases. And I think one senator can do that. So.
Okay, we talked about your total lack of media coverage to this date. Let's talk about the lack of media coverage of Mr. Obama and his political agenda. Let's call it.
Okay, yeah, it's kind of interesting. If you go back in the newspapers and read any articles on Barack Obama's campaign, they don't talk about issues. They just talk about how charming and, you know, how articulate he is, and and how well he presents himself. And there's very little, if any, discussion of his left-wing agenda, what he plans to do once he's elected. And if you go to his website, and I invite anyone to do that, go to his website and check out his issue statements, you'll find it's basically John Kerry. You know, compare the two. It's big spending, tax increases, a lot of waffling and ambiguous language on things like the war. You know, I was against the war, but now that we're there, we're going to stay there. You know, so compare it with John Kerry's, and what you're really electing is, you know, just a big government Democrat, a machine Democrat. And I think look at Obama's legislative record in the state legislature. He's not a new thing. He's been around for a long time, and it's a very left-wing, big government agenda that he's pushing. So this state doesn't need another Dick Durbin, and that's what we'd be getting. I mean, how articulate or charming he is or anything like that has little to do with what he would do in the Senate. So I'd like to see the media pay more attention to that.
Okay. I mentioned to Scott Bludorn in the show that we did about the reason for there being a Libertarian Party, and that is, and we'll talk about big government here for a minute. Since George Bush has taken office and the Republicans control the White House and they control the Congress, government spending has ballooned out of control. Now, this is a party that supposedly is founded on small government principles and so forth, and it's an absolute absurdity at this point in time. So we have the Republicans that control the White House and Congress, budget deficits out of control. If we elect a Democrat to the White House, it's almost as if we might even be in a better position because we might see gridlock there. On the other hand, if we start to elect libertarians, we may start to see a whole new flavor on how government should be run on a federal level.
Correct. I mean, I think Republicans, have deceived themselves, and at least rank and file Republicans, into believing that the Republican Party is a party of small government. They never really have been. From its very beginning, the Republican Party was a party of mercantilism, the old protectionist agenda of shutting out free trade. Even though they talk free trade, they never practice it. George Bush's steel tariffs and tariffs on numerous other goods are a good example of that. They've never been, like I said, they've been a party of subsidy. So for small government conservatives to vote Republican, I think they're deceiving. They're being deceived. The Bush administration has increased federal spending faster than the Clinton administration did.
Absolutely.
And they have no excuse now. You know, in 1994, when the Gingrich Congress came into play, they talked about small government. Even Bill Clinton got up and talked about the era of big government being over. And of course, they used Bill Clinton as an excuse for why government kept getting bigger, but they don't have that excuse anymore. They've had 4 years in office now with Republican Congress and Republican White House, and government has exploded in size. George Bush hasn't vetoed a single spending bill, not one. I mean, so I think small government conservatives should feel betrayed by this, and that's why there's a Libertarian Party. We offer that alternative. We would shrink the size of government if given the chance.
Well, one thing for sure, they can always come up with excuses, but there's never any justification for what we're seeing in the federal government.
Not at all.
In this day and age.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're not well served by the people in power right now. They simply are trying to buy us off with our own money. And they're deceiving people into believing that somehow they're fiscal conservatives. Yeah, there's really effectively no difference between the Democratic and Republican agenda at this point.
I agree. Let's talk a little bit about some of the tools that politicians use in order to garner favor with the electorate. They seem to espouse a philosophy of almost divide and conquer. They divide us up into little groups of people, and by doing that, everyone has their own little specific agenda that they're trying to push forward all the time to see what they can get from government, how much benefit that they can possibly get. And let's face it, it's been a working theory for many, many years. How do we combat that type of thinking that we have been so conditioned as the citizens in this country? What do we need to do to start showing people, wake up, see what is actually happening here, what the end result is here when you divide everyone up into little groups and you have everyone, you know, backbiting and so forth. I mean, I'm sure the Libertarian Party has an answer for it. Unfortunately, I'm not sure whether we're getting that answer out to the electorate.
Well, we have to keep appealing to people's sense of reason. You know that you know what they're seeing is all around them is the results of the failure of government. That the trick of government is to make everyone think that they can live at everyone else's expense. That what I gain is somehow for the good of society. You know, so you see big labor unions calling for restrictions on foreign trade, arguing, well, this will save American jobs. What they're talking about is not what will save American jobs. It will save a few particular jobs at the expense of everyone else's job. I'll give you an example of that. When George Bush put the steel tariffs in place, he argued that this will save jobs in the steel industry. Well, I spoke with one person whose business used steel as an input in their production, and he was buying steel from a German firm at a price much lower than he could get from anywhere in the United States. Now, this allowed him to lower his prices, to get customers all over the world buying his product, and bring more people into his business. He expanded, he hired more people. When those tariffs went into place, his German manufacturer called him, said, you know, we have to raise our prices because these taxes are being laid on us. Went up dramatically, and he started calling around to different American-owned firms, and of course they jacked up their prices too. As a result, he lost customers to, you know, other foreign competitors, ironically, because he had to raise his prices, his customers went elsewhere, and he had to lay off workers.
Right.
And so, I mean, these things have a ripple effect through the economy that most people don't understand. So, you know, so that, you know, of course, people would just see a few steel jobs saved, but they wouldn't see all the thousands of jobs that were lost in other industries. So, I mean, we just have to kind of, I think, educate, particularly people on economic issues. And, you know, I teach economics in my class, and you know, some of the students are kind of astounded by the difference what they're getting in my class from what they read in the newspapers or hear in the popular media. Aren't tariffs good? You know, doesn't that protect American jobs? And it takes a little doing, you know, and you know, I guess it's very difficult to bring that argument into a political arena where, you know, they say if you can't fit it on a bumper sticker, don't bother. It takes a little time sometimes. But I think that's really what we need to do. We need to educate the public, particularly on the economic issues, to make them understand the really harmful effects that this government intervention has in the economy, and that in the end it really doesn't help anybody. In the end, if real incomes fall in this country as a result of rising prices, if more and more industry, you know, it's going to eventually come back and bite the very people it's meant to help as well. The only people that really benefit are the politicians, who are able to bamboozle us into electing them, and then they can vote on their high salaries, which they can take out of our pockets. You know, and they don't produce anything for that.
That's an excellent point. Let's talk about another one of our hurdles that we have to overcome every time that we try to get on the ballot, and that is the ballot access regulations, laws, whatever you want to call them, but obviously they are skewed towards doing everything that they can to keep third parties off of the ballot. Not only, you know, in local elections, state elections, federal elections, and the like. You know, parties like ours, where we have limited resources, obviously, because we take no government money, as the Democrats and Republicans do. I just want to digress for 1 second. I went down to Florida recently for my wedding anniversary, and I was talking with some friends of mine, talking about I believe it was $72 or $74 million that the Democrats and Republicans will spend to party like rock stars during their national conventions, and how we take not one dime of federal money in order to put on our national convention. And the question was, well, why don't you just take the money? And you know, I was really kind of taken aback by the question, because it seemed so obvious to me why we don't take the money. It's because it's not our money to take.
Correct.
So when we have to go through all of these ballot access hoops, which depletes our resources, then that leaves us with less money in order to be able to fight the battle in getting our message out in the elections.
Yeah, the deck is stacked against smaller parties in so many ways. The Democrats and Republicans want to preserve a monopoly of power, and they cooperate in that effort. In Illinois here, for example, the Bush campaign, of course, had a little problem in getting ballot access here, because they chose perhaps to take advantage of the emotionalism surrounding the anniversary of September 11th they decided to have their convention in New York in September. By doing that, and they must have been aware of it, they would make their nomination after the deadline had passed in Illinois to get on the ballot. So technically, George Bush would not appear on the ballot in Illinois because they missed the deadline. The Democrats who control the state legislature in this state got together with the Republicans and passed a special law basically removing the deadline just for this election and just for George Bush. Right. Constitutionally questionable. You're not supposed to frame a law like a special law like that. Right. But if the Democrats really saw the Republicans as the enemy, you would think that they would try to keep them off the ballot. But of course, they cut some kind of deal, and they got George Bush on the ballot. And of course, they're challenging, the Democrats, of course, are currently challenging Ralph Nader, trying to get him off of the ballot, even though he filed petition signatures and went through the process. So the deck is stacked against smaller parties because the Democrats and Republicans are in cahoots trying to keep us out of the race. On the federal level, of course, you've got the so-called campaign finance laws, which are meant to keep money out of politics. Well, anybody that's followed the money race lately, we're about to break all-time records for money spent in election, despite all the campaign finance. You know, money's like water in politics. It finds its way around. What the campaign finance laws have really done, though, is cripple the smaller parties by limiting their ability to raise money. We can't rely on all the PACs and interest groups. We have to rely a lot of times on, in some cases, wealthy benefactors, people who have lots and lots of money that they believe in their cause and they're willing to commit their fortune to it, but under the campaign finance laws, they can't. So if, let's say if there was a multi-millionaire, or let's say Bill Gates saw this program and said, hey, you know, I like that Jerry Kohn guy, and I want to help him wage an effective campaign. I think I'd like to give him $10 million. I'll match every dollar Barack Obama has with a dollar of mine, and we'll see who can, you know, I'll get my commercials on TV, and he can't do it. Right. That's not allowed. So the campaign finance laws effectively silence voices that otherwise might get a hearing. So yeah, like I said, on the federal and state level, the deck is really stacked against us. So we were going to try hard. We collected signatures. We went out there despite the fact that we needed 5 times as many signatures as the Democrats and Republicans as we got them. So we've been able to jump over these hurdles and get into the race. But you know, like I said, we shouldn't have to do all these things. We should have free and fair elections with the same rules applying to everybody. And I think, you know, as a federal legislator, I try to do away with a lot of these campaign finance rules. And on the state level, I'm sure we try to do something about these ballot access issues.
That would be excellent. Yeah. Jerry, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to continue to discuss the issues that are going to face you here between now and November. We will be back with my guest, Jerry Kohn, in just a few moments.
At Volunteers of America, we don't just give kids a way to stay off the streets. We give them the tools they need to reach their full potential. We don't just help the elderly receive needed care. We help them live life to the fullest. We don't just provide food for the homeless. We provide job training and placement so they can buy groceries. Find out how you can support the programs that are working in your community. Contact Volunteers of America today.
Welcome back. My guest today is Jerry Kohn. He is the Libertarian candidate for United States Senate. Jerry, before we went to the break, we've been talking about several subjects, and one of them that I would like to discuss for a few minutes is our current activities in Iraq. I believe you are one of the few that has opposed the war in Iraq as far as the people that are running for United States Senate. I agree with you wholeheartedly. We had no business, in my opinion, going into Iraq. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you're right. Right now I am the only candidate that's publicly come out against the war in Iraq. I know State Senator Obama has said that we shouldn't have gone into Iraq, but now that we're there, we should stay there, which seems kind of a ludicrous position to take, that if it was going in there was a mistake, then certainly staying there has to just compound that mistake. You know, we had no right to go into Iraq. Saddam Hussein had been in power since 1978, I believe, and he never threatened the United States or our interests. In fact, we had allied with him during the Iran-Iraq war during the 1980s. You know, that Don Rumsfeld, in fact, had been in Baghdad shaking hands with Saddam, making arms deals with him as he was gassing the Kurds in northern Iraq. So in no way do I mean to defend Saddam Hussein, but he was Iraq's president. If he was a bad ruler, it was up to the Iraqi people to remove him, either through elections or revolution, but it certainly was none of our business to go over there and interfere in their internal affairs. And whether he had weapons of mass destruction, it appears that he didn't, is irrelevant to the question. I mean, he never threatened the United States' interests, and there are other bad countries out there with weapons of mass destruction. If that was the excuse, then certainly North Korea was a much larger threat with their long-range missiles. Their technology is far better than anything Saddam had. So, I mean, there's just no justification for what we did, and there's no justification for staying there anymore.
Well, my personal opinion is, if you look back through history, the United States is probably responsible for most of these dictators and tyrants that have come to power by us being allied with them at one point or another.
Oh,
in
sure.
history.
Yeah, we've created the very ogres that we're trying to slay. I mean, you know, it takes a little bit of history. You have to go back some decades to the history of intervention in the Middle East to see how these things came about. That, you know, after World War II, the politics of British and French and American policy basically created these things. The very lines on the map that define these countries in the Middle East were drawn by Westerners, and we threw together groups that perhaps shouldn't have been thrown together. We divided groups that maybe should have been together, and that's created the problems that we're dealing with right now. So I think the best thing we could do now is stop doing what got us into this problem in the first place. Withdraw our forces from the Middle East. Let the Iraqi people settle this any way that they find appropriate. If that means partition, if that means some type of new type of government, so be it. It's not for us to make that decision for them, and I think that's what we're doing right now.
Well, now that pretty much parallels into my next question, and that is regarding foreign aid. Those two areas are almost in a parallel scenario. Give me your views on what we're doing right and wrong in the foreign aid area.
Well, foreign aid basically goes to governments. You know, so it's basically taking your money from you and handing it to some corrupt dictator somewhere who puts it in their bank account. You know, we pour enormous amounts of foreign aid, for example, into Egypt. Most people don't realize they're one of the biggest recipients of American foreign aid. Now, Egypt is not a democracy. You know, anyone who studies the government of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak has been president since Sadat was killed back in the 70s, and they have elections in the same sense that maybe the old Soviet Union had elections or Saddam had elections in Iraq. They're very one-sided affairs run by a corrupt political system. And so, I mean, foreign aid is something that should be cut off completely. It's, our government should not be taking money from our citizens and handing it to corrupt dictators who then spend it as they please in ways that probably hurt the very people we claim to be trying to help. So I think in some ways we should cut off foreign aid completely, and that's a big part of what's supporting these corrupt dictatorships. If you want to bring them down, cut them off, take them off the payroll.
Jerry, we only have 1 minute left. I want to ask you one question. When you go to Washington, after you've been elected United States Senator, and you take your oath of office, are you going to take that literally to support and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, or will you take the same attitude that the current holders of office in Washington are taking with regards to that oath?
Yeah, I plan to take it quite literally. If you look at most laws that are passed in this country, they're almost all unconstitutional. You know, we should not rely on the Supreme Court to strike down unconstitutional laws, and that would be most of them. The Congress should take their oath seriously, read the Constitution, and follow it, and they haven't been doing that.
Okay. Jerry, thanks very much for being my guest today.
Well, thanks for
Good luck to you between now and November. I'm looking forward to going into the ballot box and casting my vote for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us today. My guest has been Jerry Kohn, the Libertarian candidate for United States Senate, and we appreciate you being with us and hope that you'll join us next time.